India's most chilling criminal psychology cases. Welcome back to MindCrime. Today, we go closer to home. America doesn't own the dark. Forensic psychology is often associated in popular culture with American true crime, the FBI, serial killers profiled at Quantico, Hollywood thrillers. But the same psychological patterns that produce violent offenders in one country produce them in every country. Human psychology does not have a nationality. Indians' criminal history harbors cases that challenge everything we think we know about the human mind. Cases involving psychopathy, unsolved patterns that defy explanation, monsters who hid in plain sight, and systematic failures that allow dangerous individuals to operate far longer than they should have. Today, we are looking at four of them. Case 1: Raman Raghav, Mumbai, 1960s through 1968. He became known in the press and in the communities he terrorized as Psycho Raman. Over the course of years, he was responsible for the deaths of more than 40 victims, targeting primarily homeless people and slum dwellers. He broke into makeshift homes at night and killed sleeping victims with blunt force. What made Raman Raghav's case particularly disturbing to forensic researchers was the complete and consistent absence of conventional motive. No robbery, no personal connection to any victims, no grievance. He killed as best as investigators could determine because he wanted to. His psychological profile is classic psychopathy: shallow affect, predatory instinct, opportunistic targeting of the most vulnerable members of society. His method: blunt force against sleeping victims, repeated and rhythmic, is described by forensic psychologists as a disorganized organized hybrid. Organized in his consistent selection of vulnerable targets and his ability to evade detection, disorganized in the raw, brutal nature of the violence itself. When finally caught and evaluated, Raman Raghav was declared criminally insane, diagnosed with psychopathy alongside symptoms consistent with paranoid schizophrenia. He died in a psychiatric asylum in 1995. His case became a landmark in Indian forensic history. It was one of the cases in India to bring serious attention to the importance of forensic psychiatric evaluation in criminal proceedings, and it is still studied in Indian criminology programs today. Case 2: The Stoneman Killings. This is one of the most disturbing unsolved criminal cases in Indian history, and one of the most forensically baffling. Kolkata and Mumbai in the 1980s. Homeless individuals sleeping on the streets began to be found dead, their skulls crushed by a large, heavy stone. No witnesses, no physical evidence, no credible suspect ever charged. More than 13 victims, an identical method of operation across two different cities. The same killer, or a copycat who perfectly replicated an invisible criminal signature. Forensic psychologists who have analyzed the available case evidence theorize a mission oriented offender, someone with a specific ideological or psychological motivation for targeting individuals they viewed as disposable: the homeless, the invisible, those whose death would attract the least attention and the least resources. The Stoneman case has never been officially solved. It remains open. It is a haunting example of what happens when forensic infrastructure is insufficient, when critical evidence is lost, when connections between cases in different cities are not made in time, and when the victims are people whose lives the system does not prioritize. Case 3: Auto Shankar, Chennai, 1980s. Gauri Shankar, known as Auto Shankar for his occupation as an auto rickshaw driver, was, to most people who knew him, an ordinary man. He had a business. He had social connections. He had political ties. He moved through society without suspicion. He was also responsible for six murders, primarily of women, and was deeply connected to bootlegging and organized crime networks operating in Chennai at that time. What makes Otto Shankar a forensic psychology case study is the extraordinary double life he maintained. The complete, sustained separation between his public social identity and his criminal behavior. This capacity for psychological compartmentalization, the ability to be functionally two entirely different people, is a hallmark of organized offender psychology and specifically of psychopathic personality structure. He was respected, he was connected, he was invisible to suspicion, precisely because he understood how to present a version of himself that people found credible. He was executed in 1995, one of India's rare cases of swift capital punishment for serial homicide. Case 4. The Nithari Killings, Noida, 2006. A residential bungalow in an ordinary neighborhood. Bones discovered in a drain behind the property. Skeletal remains belonging to 16 or more victims, predominantly children and young women, who had been reported missing from the surrounding area over the preceding years. The servant of the household, Sunidhar Kohli, eventually confessed. The forensic investigation that followed was a nightmare. Decomposed evidence, chain of custody failures, serious allegations of police negligence that had allowed the disappearances to go uninvestigated. Kohli's psychological profile revealed extreme deviance of a kind that had been masked entirely by the normalcy of domestic routine. Necrophilia and cannibalism, behaviors that place this case in a category of criminal psychology that is as rare as it is disturbing. The Nithari case raised profound questions about forensic investigation standards in India, and perhaps most painfully, about how missing person cases involving poor, marginalized communities are treated relative to those involving more visible, privileged victims. Four cases, 4 decades, one psychological threat. Look at the victim selection across all four cases: the homeless, the poor, the invisible. Every one of these offenders exploited social vulnerability as a shield. They knew, consciously or unconsciously, that their victims were the people whose disappearances would attract the least institutional response. All four cases exposed critical failures in early detection and law enforcement response. Warning signs were missed, connections between cases were not made, reports went uninvestigated. And in every case, the offender maintained a functional social identity, hiding in plain sight, presenting as normal to the world around them. These are not coincidences. They are patterns, the same patterns that forensic psychologists document in violent offender cases across the world. Which brings us to the most important question this video can answer. What do we do with this? We study the pattern. Behavioral profiling starts with historical data. Every case we analyze contributes to the framework that helps identify the next one earlier. We train investigators. Forensic psychology must enter frontline law enforcement, not just academic institutions. The tools exist, the framework exists. They need to be where the crime are being investigated. And we protect the vulnerable. Marginalized victims must be counted, must be prioritized. The quantity of a forensic investigation should depend on the social status of the person whose life was taken. Every unsolved case, every missed warning sign, every delayed profile, they all become data for the next generation of forensic science. Forensic psychology is not about glorifying evil. It is not about true crime as entertainment. It is about making sure the next Raman Raghav is stopped at victim one. The dark history we study today exists so that tomorrow's investigators have better tools, better training, and a better chance. Follow the cases, follow MindCrime. Every week, the psychology behind the crimes that define a generation. Subscribe so you never miss a new case breakdown. Drop a comment telling me which case haunts you the most. And share this channel. Spread forensic awareness one case at a time. I will see you in the next one.